something that I'm always thinking about now, thanks to you, is, well, what happens when the TLS channel gets compromised? And can you tell me a little bit more about, when I go to my banking website, there is a HTTPS connection and there is a TLS channel, right? But is that enough? What protection does TLS provide, and where are the weaknesses in TLS?
Okay, I think when you talk of TLS, you talk of the communication channel.
Mm-hmm.
TLS will help you to be able to protect the information you are sending from the website to the server,
Mm-hmm.
or from a device to another device.
Okay.
But it doesn't protect the integrity of the information or the confidentiality of the information when it gets to the end user.
Okay.
It's only a kind of a bus that transports an information so
Uh-huh.
that no other person could be able to see it.
Okay.
But once it gets to the end user, that's where it ends.
Okay.
So anyone that is at the end user's end can be able to see the information.
Okay.
So on the server side, it doesn't prevent an attacker from being able to retrieve the information once the server has been able to decrypt it when it got it from the communication.
I see. So what you're saying is, between two endpoints, so this data in motion is protected.
In transit.
In transit. But when it gets to the endpoint, if you're not careful, it is again plain text.
Yes. And another issue with TLS is like, maybe due to the implementation, maybe inappropriate implementation, and it happens to be compromised on the way, maybe something like a man in the middle, that it was able to direct it to a fake server who pretends to be you.
Okay.
And the person, maybe in one or other ways, it could be able to have the possibility of decrypting the information. That means they will be able to access the information.
Okay.
So TLS, if it's implemented in the correct way, can be able to prevent man-in-the-middle attack. But if not, it might be able to redirect it to a fake attacker who can still be able to access
can read all the plain text.
Yes.
Are there any good examples where TLS, even though it was well implemented, somebody got in and was able to read the plain text data and do something nefarious with it?
Sure, there have been a lot of man-in-the-middle attacks, compromising of communication channels at the end of, because the service provider believes in only TLS, that TLS could be able to give them all they need without considering
all the protection.
For example, like in the Bangladesh Central Bank issue, where an attacker was able to compromise the communication channel and was able to do a huge transfer of funds from the bank.
It was like 100 million or something.
Yeah, I think around 180 or thereabouts.
Okay. And so what they did is, I guess they got into the communication channel. I guess it was the Swift communication channel, which was protected using TLS.
Yes.
But once they got in, it was just plain text information to transfer whatever funds, and they just made a change to that, and the endpoints had no idea that something was changed.
Yes. Imagine like the endpoints, actually, if they just believe on TLS, the endpoints will retrieve the data in plain text.
Yeah.
And assuming there is a malware or a malicious actor that have control of the endpoint, they could be able to access any information on that endpoint.
So what you're saying is, in that Bangladesh Central Bank attack, the confidentiality of the information within the pipe was, I guess, broken because somebody got in, and then the integrity of the information, there was no way to test that to see if what was sent from one endpoint to another endpoint had not changed during that transmission.
Yeah, so I think you are correct. Like in information security, you always talk of the CIA, the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of the information.
Okay.
So confidentiality means that the information is protected. Now, no one could be able to see it except the intended party.
Okay.
But when you talk of integrity, it means that someone can see the information, but when that information is changed, you should be able to detect that something has happened to it.
Okay.
And availability means that information is able to reach the intended party when it's needed.
Okay.
So yeah, so one thing is like the attacker was able to see the information. That one was because of the confidentiality they trust in, and the integrity aspect of it is because they were able to do something that no one was able to detect that happens. Means there was not enough integrity protection.
Okay. So the confidentiality was maintained by TLS, but somebody got in so they could see everything in plain text.
Yes.
So then the confidentiality broke, and then the integrity was actually probably never established from one endpoint to another endpoint. So when the other central bank received the information, they just said, okay.
Another thing, you have to think of, for example, it might not actually be that the integrity was not affected at the first place, but it might be that there is no checks and balances to make sure that whoever that made that transaction was actually who's supposed to make the transaction.
Okay. And so this is why you are so gung-ho about ephemeral key exchange. Is that why? Like, why you always talk about don't just rely on TLS.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you do?
One thing is TLS is just like a channel
Mm-hmm.
to pass on information,
Mm-hmm.
which once you get to the endpoint, anyone at that endpoint can hear the information.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have to think of who do you want to have access to the information,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of least privilege or needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming I want only you to be the one that will access the information, the next thing I could do is like I can encrypt the information I'm sending so that you are the only person that could be able to access it when it gets to the endpoint.
Okay.
Without your own key, no one can be able to see the information.
Okay.
And when you did mention of ephemeral key here is not actually trying to give me that integrity per se, but it's more of making sure that if that particular key I used to encrypt information for you
Mm-hmm. was
broken, maybe after like a day or two, that the next communication I'm sending to you is not encrypted with that same key that has already been broken.
Okay.
So it's a kind of forward secrecy.
Okay.
It cannot be, if you happen to get my encryption key,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot use it to encrypt my subsequent communications.
Okay.
Or you cannot use it to decrypt my previous communications.
I see.
Yeah, so that's...
So it's almost like the way I think of it is with TLS you have a pipe that is always continuously encrypted, so the communication remains confidential. Versus with ephemeral key, it's almost like it's a burst. So every time you send something, a new key is created to encrypt it just for that transmission, however long that takes, a microsecond. Then you can decrypt it, and then you send another message. It is again encrypted with a different key.
Okay, I think I will have to explain it a bit further.
Okay.
Like, TLS can as well make use of ephemeral keys.
Oh, it can?
Yes. Like elliptic of the Heman ephemeral key is already implemented in
TLS. But do organizations use it?
Yeah, sure. So what the difference here is, maybe I think we have to explain it with respect to end-to-end encryption and TLS.
Okay.
Because TLS can as well use ephemeral keys and end-to-end encryption can as well use ephemeral
that's the difference. Okay.
Yeah. So when you talk of ephemeral keys with respect to TLS, what it means is the server will always produce a new key to encrypt each TLS communication.
Okay.
So what it means is if the first key that the server produced that it exchanged via the TLS handshake with the browser has been broken, then the next communication that the server is sending is not broken.
Yes.
Because it's a new key.
Yeah.
So that is using TLS, ephemeral key with respect to the TLS.
Okay.
So when you now talk of end-to-end encryption, so end-to-end encryption means that even if the server have established keys that it exchanged, the information that goes to the server cannot access it, except if that information was actually encrypted with a key that was meant for the server.
Server, okay.
So imagine, like, for example, we have, I have 10 users, let's say user A, B, C, and I encrypted an information for user A with user A's public key. And when I send it to the server will maybe have to like cache the information before sending it to user A. At that point in time, no other person can be able to see the information.
I see.
Not even the admin, not even the server. Even if there is a malware on the server, it can extract the information, but it cannot decrypt it.
So let me try this. So what you're saying is, let's say I'm sending you some information that I only want you to look at, and I'm going through a server.
Yes.
So I would have E01 with ephemeral key TLS, a connection between me and the server, and then the server and you would have a connection on TLS.
Yes, that's correct.
But by using end-to-end encryption, when I send you something, only, even though it goes through the server, only you can decrypt it and the server cannot decrypt it.
Yes. So server now just have like a communication channel
Okay.
to get information to me.
Okay, super. And I guess one last question. This is what we do also, right?
Yeah, sure. One fundamental security principle of IDEE is we don't rely on TLS.
Okay.
We don't rely on a TLS being a secure communication channel. We always add additional layer of encryption to be sure that any information we are sending is only meant for an intended user, and only the user will be able to see the information. And in addition to it, IDEE is designed based on privacy principles.
Okay.
So not even IDEE could be able to see the information that we are communicating between the end users and IDEE devices.
Okay. So we always use end-to-end.
That's a must.
That's a must.
Yes.
Well, this was our first talk about security. There will be many more. So join us at getidee.com. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.